Hi, friend. We're working through the Gospel of John. We're getting close to the end. We got 5 more messages in the Gospel of John. And so we're getting close to the end of the story. And one of these things we see in John and in the Gospels is this doctrine that's called the hypostatic union, where Jesus is fully human, fully divine. It's confusing to us. It's not at all confusing to him. But as we see towards the end, we see that Jesus is more and more operating in his divine power, more and more in control of events, in this case, even where it seems to be he's not in control. So we're going to read a little bit from John 18, and really just verses 8 and 9. It says, Jesus answered, I told you that I am he, so if you seek me, let these men go. This was to fulfill the word that had been spoken, of those whom you gave me, I have lost no one. So at this point, Jesus is being arrested in the garden. He and his disciples have been praying and having a quiet time. They've fallen asleep on him twice while he prayed. And so Jesus is there, and this crowd comes to arrest him. And you see, he's not perturbed. He's not scared. He's not surprised by the arrival of the crowd. In fact, he uses the moment to pause, as Jesus often does, and fulfill prophecy, to bring about something that was foretold, this idea of not losing one of his own. And so he enters that garden knowing what's going to happen. He knows he's fulfilling a plan. He knows he's bringing about a situation that he's desired, that he's going willingly. John wants us to see that Jesus is not a helpless victim here, that he is a man in control of his destiny and knows exactly where he's going. So point one is that Jesus is in control of his arrest. Everything in the scene that reminds us that he remains in control and that he's going to protect his disciple. He's fulfilling the word of God. He walks towards the cross on purpose. And this is another doctrine called concurrence, where men have one plan and God has a plan that works together with it. It concurs, even if the plan is evil. So there's this evil attempt to betray, capture, and kill Jesus that God is using to bring about his perfect will to save mankind. And that's how sovereign and how good and how in control God is. And so Peter in this scene reaches for the wrong solution. Peter has a sword. He pulls it out. He strikes a man and cuts off his ear. And Jesus tells him to stop. He tells him to put away the sword. And across the Gospels, we get the whole picture of the story. He tells them those who live by the sword will die by the sword. And then he heals the man's ear, and it is a miracle that occurs in that moment. So even in that moment when Peter is doubting, when Peter is acting rashly and stepping outside of Jesus's will, there's a plan there too, because now it is an opportunity for more people to see to witness the power of Jesus, to witness his divine nature. And so we have to remember in moments of life, we often have a challenge figuring out the balance between faithfully waiting on God and also doing that which is our responsibility to do. But this is a clear biblical challenge to us, to not overact, to not take what God has planned out upon ourselves, to wait when we should, to wait in prayer before we act. And so Peter acts, and then Jesus solves the problem. Jesus steps in and removes the problem. So Peter reaches for a wrong solution, and that's another reminder to us that fear is what leads us into denial. Fear is the thing that leads us to act rashly. Fear is a monster. It's a horrible, horrible emotion that can lead us astray over and over again. I've heard it said that fear is false evidence against reality, if you break it down letter by letter. And so we often fear that we'll lose our job. We often fear that people are talking about us. We often fear that this horrible event's going to happen overseas somewhere, and that's somehow going to rebound back to my life here in South Louisiana in my case. And the reality is that's a false evidence against reality. I have no proof that these things are going to happen. In fact, I have proof that they generally don't happen. if I would actually look honestly at situations. And so today we're driven by fear often because we're exposed to this social media machine that I'm using, and I hope you're enjoying my content, but it makes us fearful. It grinds us into its algorithm, which is fear-based. People watch TV and the news, and they watch TikTok and they watch streams because they're afraid. And so we need to pull back from that and have trust instead. And so we see Jesus is in control. Jesus is in control even when things seem to be out of control. In fact, Jesus is even in control when we fail and act wrongly. And so we see all of that here in this arrest scene as Jesus is heading to the cross. He's still teaching us how to live. He's still showing us the proper way forward. And then he will, of course, give us a door into a new life. And that's ultimately the purpose of the Gospels, is to show us how God has given us an opportunity to be restored out of this world of fear, out of a world of distrust, into a new life of trust in the Father above. Friend, I hope that ministers to you, and I look forward to seeing you someday. God bless you.